Hi, this is Armageddon, and this time I'm bringing you my top 10 90s PC games. Okay, one big important rule I'm including here right off the bat: no adventure games. I already have a top 10 for that, and even if I limited myself to only one game per series, more than half the entries would probably be adventure games. So, this time I'm focusing strictly on other genres. I'm also excluding any ports of console games, just to keep this list focused entirely on games which were made with PCs in mind. But I will give honorable mentions to Croc, The Legend of the Gobos, and Disney's Hercules, as these were two of my favorite platformers to play on PCs. But let's now get on with the list. At number 10, Superfrog. Okay, I'm cheating a little bit with this one, since this one technically is a port from the Amiga computers, and most people will make the argument that Superfrog DOS is the inferior game. But even so, this early creation from Team 17 has so much charm, such good music, and is a hellishly difficult game. I gotta be honest, I kinda enjoy the challenge. And even though this version does not have any boss fights or cinematics, it's still a fun game to pop in. But because of its somewhat lackluster presentation, I'm going to only have it as number 10. But you guys know me, I love 2D platformers, so I had to include this one. At number 9, it's Theme Hospital. There's gonna be a couple of Bullfrog games here, and of course, Theme Hospital had to be mentioned. Not only do I have a Let's Play series of this, it is a hellishly addicting game where you try to run a hospital as smoothly as possible, but we'll probably inevitably have to face the horrors of a stomach virus outbreak. The number one thing I really love about this game is just the silly sense of humor, but I think the presentation is very nice, and I also happen to like the soundtrack of this one. However, Theme Hospital does have two kind of annoying features about it. Number one is that if you get the hospital to run a little too smoothly, then the game basically just plays itself. On the other hand, in the later levels, I find myself overwhelmed by the challenge at some point. And I'm not gonna lie, 2 Point Hospital is the superior version of this game, but I would say if you like that game, I would actually recommend going back to playing this one. At number 8, Actua Soccer. You guys will remember this from my soccer game review series, and yes, this game brings to mind some happy memories of playing it on my grandpa's Windows 95 PC. Now I will stress, Actua Soccer's main disadvantage compared to a lot of other soccer games is that the World Cup mode in this one kinda sucks. It's really the kind of game that you just pop in to play a single match, either against the computer or against a friend. It's really just meant for fun, fast gameplay. But despite its age, its presentation is still really good, and I always enjoy coming back to it. It is legit one of my favorite soccer games, but due to its lack of gameplay content, I couldn't really have it much higher. At number 7, Midtown Madness. Remember the days when Microsoft used to publish some really good game series? The Madness series was my personal favorite. I even played a little bit of Motocross Madness back in the day. Never got to play Monster Truck Madness though. Despite the fact that this game features real cars, Midtown Madness is not a racing sim in the very least. It's just a crazy racing game where you gun down through the streets of Chicago with a wild variety of different vehicles. Or if you just want to have fun, you can just drive around aimlessly. Now yes, it is just a racing game if you want to look at it like that, and I mostly love this game for the nostalgia factor and the amazing soundtrack. And another fun piece of trivia, if you just want to listen to the music and not even play the game, you can just pop the game CD into a CD player. However, I will admit this is another game that you really just play in short spurts, which is why I didn't want to put it too high. At number 6, Dungeon Keeper. Now, I like both of Bullfrog's Dungeon Keeper games, and it was hard for me to pick which one I like more, but despite the fact that number 2's presentation is slightly better, I think I still prefer the original Dungeon Keeper. One minor thing is that I just like the perspective a lot better. It always felt to me like in Dungeon Keeper 2, the view angle was a little too zoomed in. And just as with Theme Hospital, Dungeon Keeper is a game that gets brutally difficult the further you get into it. The later levels are frankly impossible, which is why I love playing the single one-off maps that were released as a part of the Deeper Dungeons expansion pack. So there's a lot of fun to be had here. Like I said, both games are worth playing, but the first one is slightly better in my opinion. At number 5, Wacky Wheels. Now yes, Wacky Wheels does look like a Super Mario Kart clone, but where you drive karts with animals rather than Mario characters. But if you remember my Mario Kart series review video, you might remember that I really don't like the original Super Mario Kart that much. So Wacky Wheels is actually a superior 2.5D karting game, in my opinion. Now yes, the roster is just comprised of silly animals, but with all the weird hedgehogs and other goofy little details in the background, this game really is a lot of fun with its quirky sense of humor. And the gameplay is really easy to get into, and the power-ups may not be as memorable as those in Super Mario Kart, but they are definitely way more useful. And it's a minor thing again, but I actually like the fact that the game image actually fills the whole screen and not just half of it like in Super Mario Kart. Wacky Wheels is the most wholeheartedly solid package of the games that I've talked about so far, which is why I decided to give it the last place in the top 5. It's just a really fun game. At number 4, Duke Nukem 3D. Old school FPS games are much more my bag than modern ones, and I love me some Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, but if I have to pick a classic FPS for this list, of course it has to be Duke Nukem 3D. Gameplay-wise, it's really only a minor step up from the other 2 games that I mentioned, but I don't really need to say a whole lot. The main reason you play this game is because of John St. John's amazing voice acting. Duke's one-liners are just hilarious. But on top of that, I think Duke Nukem 3D actually has very atmospheric levels and a really kick-ass soundtrack. No, I'm not just talking about the main theme grab bag. I think the actual in-game music is pretty freaking sweet, and I think often gets overlooked because of some other factors in this game. An awesome classic of the FPS genre. At number 3, Heroes of Might and Magic. Now I'm tempted to just make this a double entry, splitting the difference between Heroes 1 and 2, but I'm just gonna be honest here and say Heroes of Might and Magic 1. You guys remember my original review video. Heroes 2 is a more refined game, but Heroes 1 is the one that I remember more fondly, because it's the game that I played the most growing up. It's an extremely addicting strategy game. I love the goofy artwork, and of course, that awesome music. You guys are probably tired of hearing me praise the music in these games, but seriously, Heroes 1 with its awesome orchestral pieces, filled with classical influences, but also the more atmospheric, intense pieces, is just a joy to the ear. Again, I highly recommend this one, but if you're looking for a more refined experience, you will probably enjoy subsequent 3 installments more. At number 2, Worms. For this entry, it could really be any version of Worms. I even tried out the original only last year, and I actually really enjoyed it. But I guess Worms 2 Armageddon is the ultimate version of this game. Worms 2 is really the one and only multiplayer game that I really enjoy playing on the PCs. And that's because it's one of the few PC multiplayer games that is definitely better when you're playing it with a friend sitting next to you. And creating your own voice packs for the Worms is also a lot of fun. Just a very addicting game. Enough said. And at number 1, Jazz Jackrabbit 1. Now I know, some of you will be a little surprised by this, because I think a lot more people are familiar with Jazz 2. And as I mentioned, there really aren't a lot of iconic platformer games for the PCs, but Jazz is the major exception. And although Jazz 2 definitely has better graphics and more playable characters to choose from, Jazz 2's levels are just a smidge too easy and not that much fun. Seriously, the original Jazz Jackrabbit has way better level variety, and I even think the music is actually much better. Yes, the gameplay is a little bit doinkier, but actually that adds to the challenge, and I quite enjoy it. Plus, unlike Jazz 2, Jazz 1 actually has a unique ending animation for each of the episodes. I will say Jazz 1's boss fights are maybe a little less interesting. Jazz 2 absolutely has way better presentation, but Jazz 1 is a way more fun of a game experience. And those were the PC games. See you on the next one.